question number 1 says, "Hi, Katie. I can't imagine ever feeling ready to leave my therapist. I like him so much, even though at times it's painful. The thought of never seeing him again is hugely upsetting, and I know that I'd be really sad. How can people reach a place where they feel okay about ending therapy and not seeing their therapist anymore?" And there are a lot of comments on this. I'm just going to read through them because they're all very similar. This is, "Hey, Katie, I have a follow-up question. I'm going to university in January of next year, and I cannot bear the thought of not being able to see my counselor anymore. I might be able to do online sessions with her, but I'm too scared to ask because what if she says no and leaves? I struggle with fear of abandonment. I don't think I can go through having to open up to a complete stranger all over again. It's taken me nearly a year to fully trust my current counselor, and I feel like she knows my patterns and is able to help me more than any other counselor I've seen before. At this point, I'm not sure if I have it in me to talk to another counselor about everything while constantly worrying that they'll leave. Whenever I think of telling my counselor how concerned I am that I won't be able to see her, I feel like I'm being too needy, and I get emotional and I avoid it. I feel like I have to quickly, quote unquote, fix myself within the next few months or I'll never be okay." Now, there are 2 more comments that are similar, but I just want to jump right into this because it's okay to feel attached to your therapist. It's very normal. That it's part of like the transference, countertransference, attachment issues, all that stuff. If we have trauma in our past, there can be a lot of reasons that we can struggle to want to continue seeing our therapist, right? We struggle with the thought that we might have to stop. And so I know that people who ask these questions were like, I can never bring it up. That's my best advice. I know it sucks. I know it's hard. But the great thing about therapy is that you telling your therapist like, "Hey, I'm struggling with this and I want to know how to be better," is going to prevent them from referring you out thinking that, oh, they're not getting better or they all are all better or whatever. Honestly, speaking the truth with them and telling them, "Hey, I want to improve this," is what we're looking for. I know you can think, "Oh, they're going to get scared and I'm being too needy." That's actually not the case. It'd be different if you were reacting out of this, pretending to be worse than you really are, or pretending to be better than you really are, or, calling them all the time or texting them all the time or doing the things that we can feel compelled to do when we struggle with attachment and, want to keep seeing our therapist. Those are the things that could cause us to be referred out. I know that just sounds like crazy, but that's really how it works because as a therapist, we're looking more for symptoms. But if you're telling me, "Hey, I've noticed this happening and I'm trying to work on it," then I can help you work on it. That's incredibly beneficial. Otherwise, I'm like, "Hey, maybe I'm not a good fit because I don't do attachment-based therapy." And clearly they're super reactive and I don't even know what tools to give them, right? If we're not reactive, if instead we speak up and say, "Hey, this is what I'm going through," then we can help you. It's almost like the idea that we can't expect a therapist to read our minds, right? Because we're people too. And so the more that they know, then the better they can be at offering us support. Now, the reason that this happens, if anybody's struggling, is it can be for many reasons. I don't want you to think the reasons that I mention are the only ones. Obviously, everyone is different. However, the most common reasons for us to be attached to our therapist is because it could be the first person who ever offered us love and support. Like we've never experienced that before. And because of that, we can think that, we can treat them like our parents or the parent that we wish we had. They can finally be a person that's knows us well. And that can make us scared that we're going to lose them because we don't know if we can deal with that hurt, right? That push pull, the BPD attachment stuff. We can like having that place to vent every week, even though maybe we don't know if we need the therapy. We just enjoy seeing them. They're part of our support group. All of those different things can feed into us struggling with the thought of ending therapy or feeling like we need to go, forever and ever. Okay. Now there was another comment. Oh, and I want to, the comment that I read about going to university, ask your therapist to do online sessions. The only reason that wouldn't be allowed, and this obviously depends on if you live in another country, I know they have similar laws, but I'm just going to speak for the United States, is that when I have a license I know it's the same in Canada actually too. So if I have a license in my state or province, right? I'm licensed in California at the moment, waiting for Texas to send me the papers. It's so annoying, but I'm licensed in California, so I can only treat people who are residents of the state of California. That's just how the licenses work. And so if you were going to school out of state, legally your therapist cannot continue to see you. Now, when that does happen, because I've had this happen with a few of my patients over the years, I usually continue seeing you this was back in the day. And so it was phone sessions because we didn't do Zoom and stuff like we do now. I've done FaceTimes and things like that too, but we did it that way until you got settled with a new therapist. And so I would do that for maybe a month or two as a transition. And that is legal and ethical, but to continue seeing you is not. And so that would be the only reason. So if you're staying in your area, roughly like your province, your state or whatever, then you should be able to keep seeing them because they're licensed within that jurisdiction. And so I would bring it up. That's something that everybody offers it, especially now after COVID, right? So ask about it. They're going to understand that you can't like fix yourself in the next couple of months. I would encourage you to keep when we're asking for something, we can do, I don't want to get too DBT because we can do what's called a dear man. I'm not going to get into that. You can look it up if you want to really detail it out. However, I feel like in this instance, all we need to tell them is, hey, I would love to keep seeing you because I still feel like there's things I need to work on. Almost like you told me. B, I struggle to open up. And since I already know you, I don't want to have to start over. That just seems impossible. And third, and C, if you're not moving states, you can be like, I'm still technically in, let's say it's you and I'm technically still in California. I'm just like 3 hours away. Would you offer that? Now, I wouldn't see a reason to not offer that as a therapist. So I can't imagine your therapist not allowing that. But keep it short and to the point of like the reasons why. And I don't see any reason why they would say no. Okay. And no therapist is ever, it's actually unethical to just leave, like up and leave. So they usually have to like titrate you down, get you some referrals, get you transitioned over. And they usually give you months to do that, like at least a month, but usually like 2 or 3. Okay. Now, another comment said, hi, how about if we never want to leave our therapist, not because of attachment, but because he's the only line of support? I know you've mentioned that the goal is to see your therapist for a short while. However, sometimes we have our therapist as our only line of support since family and friends don't get us. Is it wrong to have our therapist for life or as long as we can? I mean, the goal would be to find friends because family obviously is just family. And if they aren't good at this, then they're not. We can try to work with them and try to educate them, but we don't have to, right? But my goal would be for you to find other support like friends and build that up so that you aren't so reliant on me. And the reason that I say that like therapy is not lifelong. Now, yes, people, like I have some friends that have seen the same therapist for like 10 years. And it's not that I would say it's not beneficial, but I'm always very concerned when therapy relationships go on that long, because I think a change of scenery, a change of eyeballs, if we still need to be in therapy, can be incredibly beneficial. Sometimes I feel like there's a limit to how much our therapist can help us, but in all truth, in short, if it's helping you and you find it beneficial and you can continue and pay for it or however you access it, it's okay. But again, the goal would be to make it so you don't need them, right? Because I think I got off topic and I'm sorry, but like when you see a therapist, you go to them to like help you with a certain issue. Now, these issues can take years to work through. Like if we're talking about complex trauma or eating disorders, it can take time. However, the goal is to like be there for maybe a year or two and bounce out and try it on your own. Doesn't mean you can't go back, right? Your therapist, when you stop seeing a therapist, it's not like, oh, you can never go back. It's just not the goal. And that's because we're supposed to help you get better. And that's like fly, on your own without essentially the training wheels, right? I think of therapy as like the training wheels. And so those are really my thoughts. It's not a terrible thing, but I think that my goal would be to have you find friends who can support you or slowly let other people in. I'd be very curious about why we don't have any friends that don't get you. I always wonder if we're not giving them an opportunity if we're too afraid to open up, or, maybe we don't have the right people around us. So yeah, I would challenge you to try to find friend support. Also understanding that it is okay to keep a therapist for a long period of time. I just want whatever's causing this issue to be resolved. And that might in turn make therapy not as necessary anymore. If that makes sense. Okay. And the final question on this, another comment said, yeah, similar question. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I've been in therapy for a year and I don't really need therapy right now, but I don't want to stop seeing my therapist because I love her and I can't imagine my life without her. She must also know that I don't really need therapy, but we haven't talked about it. I see her once a month now and that feels great. Oh, that's fine. Once a month. We aren't working on any major issues right now, but my whole family is in the midst of a big transition. For some background, I went through depression. She's helped me a lot. And now I feel like I'm on the other side of that. I just feel comfort in knowing that she's there and I can call her if something comes up, and I have a standing appointment. So I know I can run things by her and she'll help me focus on what's important. I really can't imagine not needing this. There's no financial stress. I even pay out of pocket. It's so worth it for me, so I make it work. She isn't in any rush to have me stop seeing her or anything. I just worry about it. I think a check-in, there's a difference, right? There's a difference between, for anybody out there who's worried about feeling like they need their therapist, do this kind of internal check-in. Do we think of our therapist as a replacement for our mom or other caretaker? Do we see ourselves falling apart without them and are so worried they're going to leave us? So much so that it can cause us anxiety. We can find ourselves pretending to be different in therapy as a result. Those are just some of the questions I want you to consider, because those all tie back to actually like deeper childhood wounds, which really means we need therapy still. But I just want you to know that those are the reasons that I say like we have to be cognizant of it and not continue in therapy forever, because it can elicit this kind of dependence. And I don't want any of us to be dependent on any other person, right? We want to be self-sustaining and able to do things on our own. That's the goal. Does that mean that it's right for you in this moment? No. You've been in therapy for a year and you go once a month. To me, that feels more like wise counsel. Like you go just to check in on things and get another perspective. And I think that that's fine. But again, we have to check in on those bigger issues. That's why I've said, I've always talked about like the attachment and the trauma and all of that, because we really want to mitigate that. And then it's not even that that's wrong or that means then, oh, no therapy for you. No, it actually means that we haven't worked on something that's still affecting us. And that means we really do need to work on deeper things. Maybe we've have just like skirted past the issue or ignored it completely. And so those are just things to consider. And then we should bring them up with our therapist that, hey, I'm feeling this way or that way. And I think it might have something to do with the way my dad or mom or whoever was. Can we start working on that? That again, it's just back to the work, because it's just something we need to be aware of. We might be missing an entire issue or the root of the issue. And so that's why we really need to consider. I don't want anybody to think that like, oh, you get into therapy and if you get attached to your therapist, that's bad and you can't see them anymore. No, that's normal, but that means that we need to work on that. We can't just ignore it completely. And having them be your support is great, but it is encouraged that we find other support, because you can't just rely on one person for that. We need to have various people we can go to. And yes, that can take time to build up. We don't have to rush, but we should be trying to let people in and see how that feels little by little. Okay. I hope that makes sense. I know it's kind of all over the place, but it just depends on the person and what this brings up for you. When you're seeing a therapist, it stirs up a lot of old patterns and behaviors and thoughts about ourselves and relationships. And so we have to kind of acknowledge that, talk to our therapist about it, and work to heal it. Okay. Let's move on to question number 2. This question is, hi, Katie. Can you talk